Howdy ho, everybody. It is your boy, the Cho, Corey Ryan Forster here. No shows to promote, but I am, as always, excited to tell you about our sister podcast, some spin-offs of the Well-Read podcast, if you will. First, we have The Evening Skews with Trey Crowder and Mark Agee. Then, of course, Into the Abiscuit with Drew Morgan and DJ Lewis. And last but not least, Through the Screen Door with yours truly, Corey Ryan Forster, and my producer and co-host, Matt Kuhn. They're all a little bit different. Trey does the news, Drew talks about the darker side of things, and I do some pop culture nerd shit. But they are all great podcasts and worth your listenership if you are so inclined. On this podcast today, the Well-Read podcast, we talked about our accents. You'd think that we'd have already beat that to death, but no, it turns out there's still a little bit more meat left on that bone, some more shit left on that butt, if you will. And also, we got to have a conversation with one of our favorite authors, Mr. David Joy, and we talked about all sorts of stuff with him, including his new book, When These Mountains Burn, which you can pick up at bookshop.org. That is his preferred method for you to pick it up because 10% of all the proceeds go to local bookstores, and I think they've raised something like $6 million for local bookstores. It's really cool. And during this whole bullshit that we find ourselves in, probably more important than ever. So this podcast, as always, is brought to you by SmokeyBoysGrillin.com. Go to SmokeyBoysGrillin.com to get all the rubs for all your meats. Also, go to CarvVodka.com if you want to drink like the Joe, and I know you do. Go to CarvVodka.com and check out what the fuss is about Jacksonville's first and only craft vodka distillery. Now, on with this show. Skew!
They're the liberal rednecks. They like cornbread and butt sex. They care way too much but don't give a fuck. They're the liberal rednecks that makes some people upset, but they got 3 big old dicks that you can suck.
One thing I was going to say, and then we'd already moved on, it ain't just Northerners who have internalized that if you're going to make a character dumb, make it Southern.
Well,
we just did it.
Yeah.
No, we do it too. We can, I do it all the time. And that we have talked about that. And ever since we've made note of it as a group, now I always notice when I do it, and I do it like every single time. And every time I'm like, God damn it. But again,
I've got like 6 different dumb characters, and all of them is just a different Southern accent.
I would argue, though, that sometimes when I'm going, well, to tell you another thing I don't know is I'm just doing a dummy that I grew up with.
Yes,
right. No, me too.
Like.
That's the whole thing. That's what I was about to say. It's different, right? Yeah. Okay, so
I'm doing a dipshit that I know.
When people are gonna talk about a dumb person, they automatically put a Southern accent, and usually a terrible one, and everybody in America does it. But as we have realized, we also do it. But yes, I do think it is different because genuinely, when I'm doing that, I'm thinking of an actual dumbass that I know and like grew up with, and that's what they sound like. But like, if people from fucking Boston, you mean tell me they didn't know dumbass Southie motherfuckers?
Now, to be fair,
that they couldn't put that voice on instead of putting my
some
voice
of
my
on.
My buddy John does that. My buddy John will get the thickest Southie accent. He's a criminal lawyer out of Miami, and he would put on the thickest Southie accent and be like, let me tell you something about all these people over here, Your Honor, that quit. Like you do the Louis C.K. bit, Okay. And every time he would do that, but he's the only one I can think of.
But on the other end of that, like I swear to God, I saw it. I can't remember what it was, but it was either a movie or a TV show one time. And one of the characters, like they were in Oregon. They're in Oregon, and they're talking about all these buddies they had that are from Oregon. And they're like, yeah, our buddy, he's a dipshit, blah, blah, blah. And the buddy shows up, and he's like, what's up, y'all? How's it going? Da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, motherfucker, like that is not what anyone even close to Oregon has ever sounded like. But like, not only like what had happened was clearly the actor read the script. It said, you play a dipshit. And they were like, I got this. And then they did it. And the director and everyone else was like, he sure got it.
Right. So
don't you have a story about someone telling you they wanted to study your accent because they had to play somebody from Nebraska?
Literal first day I was in New York. I had like probably just got on the train and like text. It was probably headed to Woodside, honestly, because you're the only person I knew. And I'm sitting there and I was on the 7 train. That's the only reason I was able to use the phone It's an outdoor train. So I'm talking to you, and then I look up, and this dude's just sitting there staring at me, and I'm like, how you doing, buddy? You know, this is before I realized I could just ignore him. Before all the New Yorkers told me, they're like, dude, you just fucking don't say shit, huh? He's crazy. He'll piss on himself. So I'm sitting there, and he's like, hey, man. He's like, could you say something again? And I was like, hey, how you doing, buddy? And he's like, would you mind if we just had a conversation? Because like I'm in a play. I'm and in my mind, I'm still like, man, first day in the big city, I'm meeting a thespian. So he's like, I'm doing a play. And
little did you know, you wish he was homeless. It's way worse.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, dude, so much worse. At least the homeless guy would have been interesting. So the guy, he's like, I'm playing this character in this play, and he's a governor, but he's a governor of he's from the South. And I was like, okay. So we start having a conversation, and I was just like, telling all stuff, and he's like, I said, what southern state is this dude from? And he's like, Oklahoma. And I was like, this ain't it. Like, you don't want to do this like that. But the thing is that he could have, and they would have been like, yep.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. If that script said rural Oregon, that might have been enough.
Y'all are 100 on all this, except for like there are parts of Oklahoma that have.
Not the governor parts.
Yes, but my point was like it's still specific. My specific accent is not the Oklahoma redneck accent.
That is true. Not the governor parts of Oklahoma.
No,
parts where the governor come from.
Right. Yeah. Well, like Tim Blake Nelson. Yeah, he's from Oklahoma.
Adam Carroll.
But we ain't got the same
we do
accent.
shows in Oklahoma, and we meet old boys from Oklahoma.
Yeah. No. I wasn't trying to say. No, hold on. I was not trying to say that Oklahoma does not qualify as red asses. JR is from fucking Oklahoma. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm just saying, like, people don't understand that there is not one Southern accent. Like, there's not one Northern accent. Like, people in Connecticut don't sound like fucking people in Boston.
So this reminds me of something I saw, a movie trailer that I saw, and I've talked about this to y'all off mic before, and as I recall, y'all have never been as bothered by it necessarily, but it's been something that annoys me, and I got reminded of it again the other day when it comes to movies. I saw a trailer for a Netflix movie coming out that looks really good. Trailer looks fire. It's called The Devil All the Time.
Oh,
and
I saw that.
The cast is absolutely fucking loaded. Bananas. And just from watching the trailer, it seems like it's like it. While watching the trailer, I thought this is a period piece set in the rural South. There's a crazy ass preacher and a hillbilly boy and all this stuff, and there's murder and intrigue and yada yada yada. And it looked real good, and the accent sounded pretty good, and the cast is stacked. Every goddamn one of them is foreign, like not even American. But then I looked it up, and now I could be wrong, but I looked it up, and it's actually set in Ohio. And when I saw that, I was like, hold on, why did they all sound like that then? Right. Because I didn't know where it was set. It didn't say where it was set. Just listening to them talk, I figured it was set in the deep South somewhere 50 years ago. But it's actually set in rural Ohio. And now I know they got fucking hillbillies in rural Ohio, but I didn't think that they had the accent, though. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some of them do.
No, the Cincinnati accent is a very specific hillbilly accent.
Yeah.
That's the southernmost city. And even right outside of Cincinnati, I mean, for the most part, it ain't country.
I was about to say, I've heard some of those people that from northern Kentucky or whatever, like that little area right there, and even them, like, no, I don't. I mean, it doesn't sound rednecky to me.
The Devil All the Time. I think it's like coal country, Ohio. And again, I know they got hillbillies there. I just didn't think they had the accent.
What year does it take place?
And I don't know 100% for sure, but it's definitely in the past.
I was about to say, in my mind, maybe they had it then.
That's true.
Yeah. I might be wrong. Maybe it is accurate as far as the dialect goes. But either way, when I found that out, that annoyed me. But I was already annoyed by the fact that, again, and I know I've heard for years, apparently Hollywood likes to cast like the Brits or Australians to play rednecks because they're better at faking our accent than Americans are at faking our accent.
Than non-Southern Americans. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. But that's what, but like, there are Southern actors. There's a lot of them. We know a lot of them, and they're good too. They fucking hit.
And I mean,
here's like superstars, but like this, I'm not. like Bill Burr had that bit on his last special about a character that was like quadriplegic, and some noted actor played it, and the quadriplegic community got upset because it's like, you can't get a quadriplegic actor to do that, whatever.
Like,
I thought actors
name one.
thought actors were actors, and that type of thing. But I just feel like it's particularly egregious with like almost any Southern accent you ever hear in media is never an actual Southern person. It's always a fucking foreigner.
The only way I'll defend it a little bit is like if it was a traditional audition process and they were looking at a lot of people and like, look, this person, even though they're foreign, for all other areas of the character, they just hit harder than this Southern motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's possible that, like, yes, this person has that natural accent, but this person pulls it off enough and they hit harder at everything else. But I'm only taking Drew's side here, like his devil's advocate side.
According to Brad Carter, our buddy, who is from
Tremendous.
Georgia, and tremendous, and he was in True Detective the first season, and according to him, twice on an audition for a Southern character, the director, or the casting director, told him, whoa, you got to tone that down. You're going too hard with your Southern accent, and people won't buy it.
Yeah.
And he said, that's my accent. And they said, whatever, for real, tone it down.
Yeah.
So he had to tone his own accent down. So even through the true, process that you were talking about, Corey, even if they were giving people a fair shake, I think there's, I don't know if that's a bias or, look, they may be right. Like, that casting director may be correct that an actual Southern accent to a general audience will make them kind of go to, or whatever. I don't know.
No, I mean, maybe there's part of me that definitely feels like you're right in the sense of like, it's like Hollywood wants a Southerner, but like we want one of the good ones, like not the.
But like, I feel like, and maybe it's just because I have an ear for it because I'm from the South and it's just that so many of them are, bad. But I feel like a lot of times the other actors they get to play a Southerner and put the accent on, I feel like they go.
I agree.
They go too far with it and make it sound dumb. Maybe it's just that it's off, and so it sounds like that to me. But it sounds like they go way too far.
The example that I always think of when you think of something like that was the movie Logan Lucky. And for the record, like the movie, I really did, and I like what's his name? Kylo Ren.
Adam Driver.
And I like Adam Driver. I genuinely like Adam Driver. But in that movie, I was just like, fucking, what? This ain't it.
Way too
horrible.
much.
It didn't sound like anyone. And again, man, like, I'm not shitting on it. He took the role. He got hired to do it. Like, do your thing. Like, but it just, every time he was talking, I was just like, no, because I could buy Daniel Craig. Like, that was fine. That motherfucker does a couple different Southern accents that hit for me. He goes from the West Virginia Logan Lucky to the fucking Foghorn Leghorn in what's the movie? Knives
Out. I love that movie, and him in that, he's so clearly like hamming
just
it
doing
up
Kevin
and chewing scenery and shit in that like I'm really on board with that type of thing. It's like the performances.
Well, I mean, I said it here for like,
No, I know, but I'm saying it's like. It's a different, even a different thing to me.
He was a caricature of a human being. He was a caricature of a Southern detective type person. So, like, why? Who gives a shit who plays that? But Adam Driver and Logan Lucky, it was like, to me, it was just one of those things where, like, goddamn, like, what is the vetting process for something like this? Like, how did that? Do they not have one fucking real Southern person that they can, like a continuity expert? Like in a movie like that, you'd think they'd have like your regional fucking good old boy that would be like, no.
Steven Soderbergh is from Louisiana. Steven Soderbergh's from the South, and that's a Steven Soderbergh movie. And I love Steven Soderbergh.
Adam Driver sells way more tickets than somebody with a good accent.
That's what it is that it's Adam Driver. He's, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, who gives a shit? And I'm not shitting on him. It wasn't it.
Well, I mean, I genuinely like Adam Driver. I've seen him on some interviews and stuff, and I think he's really cool. I thought he was great in Girls. I didn't see that whole series. Andy did, and I saw some of the scenes he was in, and he stole every scene he was in. But only thing else I've seen him in is as Rilo Ken or whatever the hell his name is, in Logan Lucky. and I hated him in both of them.
Oh man, see, I'm a fucking Kylo Ren apologist. Like, I think he's great in that because like everybody's whole beef with him is like, oh, he just plays this fucking like whiny little. I'm like, yeah, man, that's what he's supposed to do. He's Kylo Ren's a fucking millennial Sith. Like, he's upset because he's never going to be his fucking
papa. He's supposed to be real powerful.
He is powerful, and he gets mad and he throws temper tantrums and like cuts fucking aliens' heads off and throws his shit against the wall. Like, he's a mid-20s angsty emo fucking Sith. It hits for me.
No, Kylo Ren hits for. He's one of the things about those movies that does consistently hit for me.
I'm Driver didn't hit in those movies. He hits though.
Oh, he inarguably hits.
I was trying. What was the other big thing he was in?
Pretty Raven that you only liked him in Girls, but yeah, he was.
Yeah, no, he's been in a bunch of shit, and I was just sitting here trying to.
Yeah, the thing that launched him.
I'm just saying, it's a joke about how you're a
girl. I know. You're over here, but you're defending the whiny teenager in a comic book movie for kids. But yeah, you're right.
That movie was not for kids. These are way more adult oriented. But
Marriage Story.
Yeah,
that was it. I've only seen scenes of it. And it was good. And then what about Black Klansman though? I heard he was great in that. And I haven't seen it.
I didn't see that one actually.
It's a really good movie. But okay, Marriage Story. Drew, I thought we talked about this. I never watched the movie, but that one scene that got passed around a lot. I feel like it was both in equal measure. I feel like a whole lot of people.
Well, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
Yes, him and Scarlett Johansson. A whole lot of people are like, God, this is so raw and powerful and courageous. This performance between these two A-list actors, whatever, and other people. And I was firmly in this camp. Watching it, admittedly out of context, and just that, but it was like almost comical to me.
Me and Andy parodied.
I was about to say, y'all did a sketch, right? Yes, and that's why it was good to me because I was like, it kind of needed parodying. A lot of people were like, their criticism with it was like, hey, yeah, these two people are great actors, but they forgot one of the biggest rules, which is screaming doesn't always equate to emotion. Like, that doesn't always mean a great emotional performance just because you're screaming. Really, to me though, like. When I watched that scene, I was like, yeah, I've been this mad, and yeah, I've had a woman be this mad at me. That's about how that goes. It was when he punched the wall like a bitch. I was like, dog, I was like, motherfucker, you was in the army. Get that shit. Like, get that wall. Of course, now I don't know anything about his character. I guess he might be, like, that's how his character would have slapped a wall.
Well, he's a director, right? He's playing the director.
That is how they would have done that. But like, he was like screaming so hard, and I was like, yeah, boy, run, tell that. And then he just like, man, it's kind of hit the wall. Yeah, it didn't hit. Maybe he does suck. Fuck Kylo Ren. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. He's great.
I love Adam Driver on interviews, personally.
I don't know how many I've seen him in, but he does hit for me. Joe.
Yeah, baby.
Is them dogs going to hell this fall or what?
Man, I'm not even like right now. I'm trying so hard to just like distance myself from any emotions because I think that like it. Well, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just to me, in one snap of the finger, this whole thing's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so there's part of me that wants to, reread up and look at all the blue chippers and check all this shit out. But then it's like either way, it's going to be like a abridged, weird type of season. So it's hard for me to even really care. But like, I'm trying, like, look, I'll believe it when I see it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I do think it's funny though, so like last week, a bunch of other college football leagues, like the Big Ten and the MAC and a few others, formally canceled their entire season this fall. They went ahead and did it. And I do think it's funny how like the SEC is just like, full bore, fuck that. We playing football.
Oh yeah,
like just
and their whole thing too is like good. Let the other conferences quit.
It's your debate, right?
Let them quit. It's just it was always just us, anyways. Go Dogs.
Right, exactly.
That's all it was. The SEC go Dogs.
They're not even like none of them are really even talking about like, look, I understand it's a difficult decision. Like none of that. They're just like, no, we playing. we are playing. Nick Saban
play. Saban saying that to like 12 of his teammates that have ventilators hooked up to him, bleeding out of their eyes. Can he play?
Nick Saban literally brought up like, why don't we just cancel school and keep football? Like,
By the
danger
way,
is at school. He's like, the danger is when they go to parties and go to classes. We keep them safe. We should cancel school and play football. Why is nobody talking about that? He literally said that.
And like many of his offensive schemes, not a bad idea.
No, I was about to say, dude, listen, man. If you look at the science, like he's probably right. And if there was a deal where it's like, look, if we just canceled school and football, then there's a 80% less chance. Then fucking again, as I say, go Dogs. But
I believe Saban's viewpoint there is definitely. So you're telling me that if I kept them in one spot all the time and controlled every aspect of their life, when and where they ate, where they slept, when they washed, who they hung out with, I have the opportunity to do that in the name of their safety. Right. Of course he's fucking salivating.
Right. Absolutely, man.
But right now they're just going to play just each other. SEC only games, no out of conference games. There's only going to be like 8
what's
games.
the fucking difference? Go Dogs.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And of course, they have been on some bullshit with who plays who when you go across East-West divisions.
Yeah.
Georgia and Florida have gotten the easiest fucking schedules of anybody in the East. There was they've admitted it. The SEC board or whatever admitted we had no formula. We had no randomness. We didn't draw names out of a hat. We picked these games, and we're not telling you how we decided.
Well, don't worry.
And what they were trying to do, they were trying to make it to where the best teams didn't have a trap game on the other side.
I thought Georgia played Alabama first game of the year.
I might be wrong, but maybe I'm wrong.
I saw that somewhere. It could have been the Onion just trying to scare me.
Who's your big rival in the West?
Auburn.
So you have to play Auburn. You can't they didn't get rid of anybody's big rival. So if you have a big rival, you play. Auburn. But then when they added them, I'm pretty sure y'all got like Missouri and A&M.
Hits. Go Dogs.
They also it was floated at one point, and this ain't gonna happen, and I don't know how this would even work anyway. But it was floated at one point when all these other leagues were canceling it because the Big 12 was very much debating it. The idea of like Texas and Oklahoma playing in the SEC this year, and it's just like they were just throwing all kinds of shit. Yeah, like we're gonna play, y'all come play with us. We'll settle this shit right now. By the way,
I'm with y'all.
Yeah,
Oregon
shit.
Yeah. The San Diego Chargers, bring them all.
Yeah, USC, bring your ass. Like fucking
Nebraska. The Big Ten officially canceled, and Nebraska was just like, "Well, we're still going to play." And it was like, "Who are you going to play? We'll figure it out. We're going to play somebody."
Just 12 red and white games in a row.
Oh man. Well, the NBA's, they're doing it, and it seems to be working. And thank God, sports are back. And something we were talking about on the thread that I'm not sure non-sports fans understand, or maybe they do, and that's why they make fun of us. But it's about the games, but it's really about the drama.
Yeah.
And I'm saying all that because the drama in the NBA.
That's why they're on TNT, Drew. TNT is drama.
Exactly. It's on super high alert in the bubble right now because these guys are playing each other, talking shit about each other on Twitter. And then they just have to, go to the dining room together.
Yeah, dude, Dame is dropping mixtapes from the cafeteria.
Damian Lillard has dropped a diss track in the middle of the bubble. Like, he took his studio with him, and he's dropping diss tracks and dimes. He's dropping 40 and 50-point games on people and then rapping about it later. I love the NBA.
No, I got to tell you, man, I hope things get back to normal and, next year's a normal season. But at the same time, I'm like, but still do it Big Brother style. Still keep that. This does hit. Nobody will get sick, but, we should all just play in a couple spots. You know what I mean? Milwaukee don't need a stadium. Fuck all that shit. Keep it Big Brother style.
But there's people in Milwaukee who are literally this is all I have.
Yeah, but they can.
Giannis Nikoduko is the only thing I have.
Yeah, that's true, but they can just watch it on CBS in prime time. Big Brother meets the NBA. I think it's been it's been cool. But you're right, man. I've honestly paid more attention. This is the first time in any sport that I've paid more attention to the fucking Kardashian aspect of it than I have the fucking actual game.
Well, it's so much better to know that Clippers, not Pat Beverly. What's the guy who left?
Lou Williams.
It's so much better to know that Lou Williams left and went to a strip club to eat chicken wings than it is to, and I'm not shitting on kids with cancer, but every other lead in to every other NBA game ever was oh, and now we're going to spend 5 minutes telling the story of a kid with cancer whose favorite player is
No,
Lou Williams.
No,
And
I
I'm
hear
like,
you.
man, like, let the kid go to the game. Let him meet Lou Williams. But come on, don't. He's got 6 months to live. I'm trying to, like, get drunk and watch these people dunk.
Yeah, man, we just got off work. I ain't trying to hear that bullshit. I'm with you.
It's so much better to be like, did you know? Did you know that they're fucking the same hoe and she's here in the bubble? That's way better to lead the game with.
No, I mean, I agree. That's way more entertainment. It's like becoming WWE, but the points actually matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, it still is a real sport, but like there is like that drama on the side. Because again, dude, I don't even know if I heard myself say it. Dame is dropping mixtapes while living with these motherfuckers. That is so hard, dude.
Don't care.
I don't give a fuck, son.
Well, that motherfucker, he hard. You know what else is hard?
My way.
That's right. Yes, this episode is sponsored by Blue Chew, y'all.
Blue Chew, the official bubble pill.
That's right. When everybody could use a little more fucking right now, but and otherwise. And you can increase your performance to get that extra confidence in bed. You go to bluechew.com, blue like the color blue. Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis.
You can take them anytime, day or night, even on a full stomach. And since they're chewable, they work up to twice as fast as a pill, so you can be ready whenever opportunity arises. Blue Chew is made in the USA. It is prescribed online by licensed physicians, so you don't have to go to the doctor or wait in line. Very important during a pandemic. It's even cheaper than a pharmacy, and they prepare and ship it right to you in a discreet package. No awkwardness. You don't even need to leave the house. You don't need to put your mask on unless your lady wants you to.
That's my favorite part about it because like I can't have another thing for my pharmacist to know about me. You know what I mean? Like we went to high school together. Like I don't need to be going in there and her being like, "Oh, look at Corey. He's fat, bald, and also weenie don't hit." So I'm really
if you're gonna put on a mask in order to have sex, you want it to be in the comfort of your own home.
Absolutely. So right now we've got a special deal for our listeners. Visit bluechew.com and get your first shipment free when you use our special promo code RED, R-E-D. All you got to do is pay $5 shipping. Again, that is Blue Chew, B-L-U-E, chew.com. Promo code RED to try it for free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice, and we thank them for sponsoring this podcast. And remember, guys, when you support our sponsors, you help make this podcast possible. So please be sure to use our promo code RED at BLUE chew.com and get you a new dick.
Hell yeah.
New dick.
All right.
Is it time for our guest?
Sure is.
I got a guest this week, and it hits.
Does hit.
Our guest this week is the author, David Joy. David Joy is a buddy of ours. We got to meet him at a show we did at a college where his partner works, and he is the author of Where the Light Tends to Go, as well as The Weight of the World and The Line That Held Us. His new book is called When These Mountains Burn. He sent me an advanced copy. It is incredible. I'm so pumped to have him here today. He's also got an essay called Digging in the Trash that was in Bitter Southerner. That is my introduction to him. We talked a little bit about that essay. You guys should check him out. He's head to toe legit. He's head to toe progressive redneck. I don't know if he would agree with either of those words, but he's head to toe about what we're about and about what Well Red Nation is about.
Absolutely. He rolls. This interview rolls too. Skew. What's up, man? Look at that. Look at your beard. I like it.
You look like you're flying a helicopter to the Dollar General.
That's about right.
One of them dudes who works on the island, like flying in tourists, but you don't want to know his backstory.
Hell no.
It's like, David's the greatest damn helicopter pilot we got, but don't ask him what happened in Bolivia.
I mean, he's fresh out. He is fresh out, but
did y'all hear me good on this?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounding good. Where are you at right now?
I'm sitting outside a firehouse.
Right on.
The sub
A firehouse or sub? Yeah, sub place.
What? Oh no, not a sub.
Okay.
a real honest to God firehouse.
Yeah. My head goes to sandwiches first as a general rule.
sandwiches go to your head too.
That's true.
What the hell are you all dressed up for?
I shot a video and I didn't want to change. I ain't done yet, so I didn't want to fully change. You like that? Corey said I look like I went to a horse funeral.
I thought maybe you took some weird ass job out there or something.
Yeah, I did.
So you got to drive every time you want to do, and I assume that you have to do a lot of these, David. What would be in a critically acclaimed author and all? You have to do a lot of these little, book junkets or whatever. You got to drive to goddamn town every time you want to do these.
Oh yeah. Well, I got to do that to take a phone call.
Man, you are head to toe legit.
You are, man. Because I complain all the time about how my internet I live in a place where my internet just sucks, but I clearly still have it. I'm sitting here in my house. It's just sometimes it'll go out. But dude, if I had to get in my truck to make stuff work, guess what? Stuff wouldn't work. We wouldn't be doing shit. That's what would happen.
Yeah.
You would definitely go to the Firehouse sub shop though.
Yeah, it's not too far.
Well, welcome to the podcast, author David Joy, friend of the show, friend of ours. David's got a book out, When These Mountains Burn. This comes out Wednesday. The book's officially out tomorrow.
Yep.
So, right. So by the time you hear this podcast, folks, David's book is already out. If you haven't pre-ordered it, go ahead and order it. We'll talk about that soon. But as you've already gathered, he lives in the sticks of North Carolina. We won't say where, and he has to drive in for phone calls, Zoom shows, and only once have we gotten him to come to a well-read comedy show, and that is because it was literally at the place his wife works, close to his hometown. We tried to get the man to go to Asheville, and he said, and I quote, "I'm not going to fucking Asheville." David, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Now, I've talked to you in the past about book events, and obviously pandemic's on everyone's mind. I know it sucks overall, and no one's accusing you of being relieved, but do you prefer doing your book events from your truck in front of the firehouse as opposed to having to go to places you don't want to go?
Oh, it gets me out of a lot of stuff. so yeah, maybe in some ways that's pretty nice. But at the same time, I think I've lost a bunch of. I had a bunch of stuff go wrong, especially in France. I had a bunch of stuff lined up that was going well in France, and all that fell apart because of this. And then book promotion. I mean, you really do need to be traveling and going to different bookstores, and since that's out of the question, you're really limited as far as how you can market a book.
Yeah, that's true. On the side of the coin, though, it's possible there's a lot more people that have gotten back into. I'm one of them. I was someone who used to enjoy reading a lot, and then grew up and I was like, I ain't got time to read. I'll just lay here and watch the shows. During this quarantine, I have just been absolutely flying through them. So maybe it'll balance itself out. You know what I mean? A lot more people buying shit.
Yeah. I saw last month they had book sales across the board were down something like 40%.
Well, never mind. I'm a fucking idiot, and I'm wrong.
We're all going to die. Fuck learning. Now, I'm big in France is inarguably one of the coolest sentences a person could say. So I do want to hear you say it at some point. Do you have any idea why you're big in France?
Look at me, man. Shit, you see something like this walking through the streets of damn Paris, you're going to stop and take a picture. I have no idea why they historically liked Southern literature and especially Appalachian literature. And I wouldn't say at all that I'm big over there. I mean, there are people who are legitimately big over there. But my work has tended to be, it's found an audience there a lot more than I think it has kind of, across the U.S.
Yeah, well, I was about to say, dude, just the fact that you're big enough over there for it to warrant you making a trip is enough in my mind. Because, we can't even go to fucking Buffalo, New York, and we live here. You know what I mean? So, the fact that you can go to Paris and people are like, look at that fucking Sasquatch. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, well, I've never been invited to Buffalo, New York either. if I have my choices, though, I think I wouldn't go to. I'd choose France over Buffalo, New York.
For sure.
Well, I would say let's not disparage Buffalo, but
No.
clearly
I
none
like
of us
Buffalo.
have any fans there, so it
No,
doesn't matter.
I like Buffalo fine, but it's like, yeah, come on. Yeah, for the 11 of you that were at the Sunday show, I'm very sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly what we said to the only 11 people who did want to hear us, David. We blamed them, the only ones who were there for us, for the rest of the damn city.
I thought if I'm guessing as to one thing that I think France has going for is they strike me as Southern as hell.
Really?
I mean, you got it. Well, especially you get Southern France. I mean, you take a dish like cassoulet. Like cassoulet, the star ingredients is tarby beans.
Right.
It's very similar to like if we was eating a big ass pot of pintos. If you put cornbread on a plate of tarby beans, you could serve that anywhere in the South and people would sop it up.
So they like beans, they like getting drunk, and they stink. I can see what you're saying.
Also,
That's
I mean,
right.
to go on that, their culinary palate is very butter heavy, so that's another thing in their favor.
That's right. And meat heavy, you know?
Yeah.
And it's meat heavy in the good way, like ducks and rabbits and, you know, that not these damn giant ass chickens that they serve over here.
But they're not all fat as fuck, right? Like we are. Like not.
Oh, hell no. But that's the cigarettes.
Yeah, right. But yeah, that's what's why, because you know they don't fuck around when it comes to culinary traditions in France. They're like, you know, they're at the tip top, and it's all of that butter and fat and meat and stuff like you were saying. But they're also stereotypically skinny little bastards. I've never been to France even a little bit, and all I know about them is the stereotypes, and I wouldn't have thought. You know, I feel like the stereotype of the French is that they're like.
Yeah,
pretentious, uppity, you know, mimes or whatever. Like I wouldn't have thought. I wouldn't have thought that they would have a lot in common with, you know, the South or whatever. Generally speaking, but I mean, that's cool to hear that. Like to hear the other side of the story.
Yeah, I've experienced the exact opposite, and I mean, hell, I grew up just like that, you know, and thought the same things. The only thing I ever knew of, you know, French people was Pepe Le Pew and berets, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it.
Two pretty good exports, in my opinion.
Has been, yeah. My experience has been kind of the opposite of that.
So you've never been date raped by a skunk, is what you mean?
Not in France.
Well, I mean, obviously, stereotypes. I mean, that's something we here on the podcast talk about a lot, and how people view you. Where else have you been elsewhere? You know, traveling in Europe, or is it mostly just France?
Yeah, I've never traveled really anywhere else in France. As far as stereotypes, the worst stereotyping I've ever endured was here. You know, I mean, hell, it's traveling around the U.S.
Right.
And I mean, it was a ritzy media escort picking me up and asking, you know, what people think about your books where you live. And then she paused, and before I could answer, she said, or I'm sorry, can they read?
Word.
Like, yeah, they can read. You know, it's like, yeah, we can read.
That's so bizarre to me that like the person saying that to you has to also know that you fucking wrote it. Like, in her mind, you're good enough to have written this book, but nobody else could even dare fucking read it.
You know, I mean, we get versions of people in places all the time too. It's like they don't think of David or they don't think of us when they're having
we're not Southern
as being the same as the people they're asking the question about. Obviously, you're different, or I wouldn't be here talking to you.
Right.
But I'm asking you about the rest of them.
Right.
Mongoloids in the hills or whatever.
Yeah, they think there was like some like liberal symbiote that got in a Southern person, and then we're that. Like we're fucking Carnage and Venom or something.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense. I wanted to get into this general thing, and I figured there would be some of that mixed into it. But like, it seems to me, again, as an outsider, as far as literature goes, that like you mentioned Southern literature, Appalachian literature, that's like one of the art forms where Southern isn't necessarily like a pejorative to a big group of people, meaning like there's like a long tradition of like celebrated Southern literature that I don't feel like applies to, obviously we all know there's a huge tradition of music too, but I think a lot of people in other places don't think about it that way. You ask them if they like what music they like, and they're like pretty much anything but country or whatever, that type of shit. And comedy, same thing. Southern comedy just means one thing to most people. You know what I mean? Like if you put Southern in front of an art form, usually to people in other parts of the country, that's a bad thing, except I feel like that don't really necessarily apply with literature. Is that accurate in your experience, or does that happen with y'all too, with Southern writers too?
Well, I think one thing that happens is that you're regionalized in a pigeonholed sort of manner, and so I think about somebody like Ron Rash, who just had a new collection of short fiction come out, and the New York Times called him one of our greatest living writers, which I absolutely agree with. And I think he owns the short fiction form. But if you ask him, that same question, he would say that in the past, when people ask him what kind of literature he writes, and then he starts describing it, they say, "Oh, you write regional literature," or "Oh, you write this," and it's a way of marginalizing it into a very specific thing. And one thing that's interesting is then I don't necessarily know that takes place across the board. And so I think of a writer like Maurice Ruffin, black writer from New Orleans. We Cast a Shadow. That novel came out, I guess 2 years ago at this point. I think it's one of the most important works of the past few decades. When people talk about him as a writer, or they talk about that novel, they don't necessarily use Southernness to define it. They use blackness to define it,
Right.
Which is equally, if not more so, limiting in a lot of ways. But I think readers and just any type of art, I think they're always trying to put things into categories, and maybe that's not even a horrible thing. I don't know that it's always a negative. I think as human beings, the natural tendency is to try to compartmentalize facts so that we can make sense of a whole lot of information. The problem is when you then think that because something is Southern, or because something is black, or because something is whatever, that it can't speak to a universal truth, that it carries no universality.
Right. And I feel like a lot of times it ends up being the exact opposite is true. I mean, the more specific something is, the more like authentic or relatable, or however you want to put it, it comes across as to everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was about to say, because sometimes it's a positive thing for me. Like, I don't like being put in a box. I don't like being pigeonholed. But as a consumer, at least, like, let's say hypothetically, I didn't know who this person was, and someone was like, "Oh, hey, have you ever you like to read? Have you ever read Rick Bragg?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know who that is." And they were like, "Oh, he's really good Southern literature." I'd immediately go, "Fuck yeah, Southern literature, that's my shit. I'll listen." Put that on the front of the box, because then I will definitely pick that up. So I guess it does go both ways a little bit. But yeah, fuck being pigeonholed. That don't hit.
Yeah, I was a little intrigued and not surprised by your answer, because it's pretty typical to our experience and stuff. But I can remember, and this sort of gets to what Trey's question was getting at, I can certainly remember feeling like Southern literature was, I guess, allowed to be at the forefront of discussions about literature, whereas Southern plays, other than maybe Tennessee Williams, weren't, whereas Southern comedy was always relegated to, second class or whatever. Is that because of the great writers that we've had, or is it because, what else could it be? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think that's probably, that has to be it, especially if you're talking about an American literature tradition. We've always had incredibly strong writers in the South, and I had a teacher one time. She's really probably the greatest influence on me. Her name was Deidre Elliott, but she was a nonfiction writer, and she was from Kansas, and then had spent most of her life out west, kind of in the desert. But when she and I got to talking about writing and storytelling, and she thought that every person who was born in the South was automatically born with a great advantage when it came to writing, when it came to storytelling, because we grew up surrounded by that tradition. And I think in a lot of ways she's right. You know, if I go back and I think about, you know, a good preacher, for instance, a good preacher is a storyteller. If he's just, you know, slamming the book, reading the Bible, he's going to bore you to death. But when he can relate it with a story, you're entertained. And I can think of some of the earliest times that I was just enthralled by story. It was things like that. Or it was walking outside of church as a little kid and all the old people would be together and they'd be, you know, shooting the shit, telling each other stories. Or it was sitting in the living room at my grandmother's house and listening to them swap stories. I think as Southerners, we tend to grow up surrounded by narrative and by storytelling. And so I think in some ways it probably puts us at a greater advantage than maybe some other places.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of it especially, and we also have a history of not getting in a hurry over things, which I think is why we're, you know, like you were talking about being on the porch. When I first started doing stand up, I would have a lot of people tell me that, man, your style's kind of different. I don't feel like you're doing jokes. You sound like just my buddy talking to me on the porch. And I was like, well, that clearly must come from, that's just how I learned to talk, was hearing my dad stand on the porch, hear my uncle stand on the porch and tell these stories. And we ain't got no fucking else where to go. So hell, do the 15-minute version, man. Let it rip.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you in Southern culture as a child, you're to be seen, and what I mean by that is that as a child, the adults expect you to be in the room, but they expect you to be on your P's and Q's and sit there and listen. And when you're raised with that type of importance placed on listening, I think you all pick up a whole lot of idea for narrative.
That culture also is true at church, obviously, which we've already brought up. And, you know, I've been accused accurately and fairly of just stealing my dad's rhythm as a preacher. And as you said, those narratives are, I mean, they're older than the Bible. Most of the narratives in the Bible came from even before the Bible. And when they spin them or make a new narrative with them, as you said, so it can relate to people, that's amazing. And you are forced to listen as an 8-year-old. I mean, I remember going to different churches later in life and being surprised that they would like take the kids to the back, you know, so that they could have adult church and talk about things like, hell, you probably shouldn't talk about that in front of kids, but we did. And, you know, made better storytellers. Yeah,
well, and I think if you're talking about why Southern, I said this once in a reading. I was asked why Southern literature and Appalachian literature has such a long history of violence, and I said it's because of the church, and everybody kind of gasped, and I said look, I said that's the most violent book that I've ever read, and it is. Everything about that book. And when you're raised with storytelling side by side with tremendous violence, it's like, what the hell else kind of stories you want us to talk about?
Right.
You touched on earlier, you're talking about the question about, you know, people where you're from, can they even read? But like along that lines, how are you generally received? And I mean, like when the world is, you know, going about its business normally and you're on book tours and doing events in other places and whatnot, how are you personally generally received by people? Because I mean, you look and sound the part, you know, for sure, because you are that. Yeah. And how do people generally respond to that?
Taken aback.
Yeah.
And I would say it's the same for each and every one of y'all.
Yeah.
You know, when I hear Trey's voice, I don't immediately expect him to be, you know, very well read on political issues and all of these, you know, on top of things that most Americans, in all honesty, aren't on top of.
Right.
You know, if you're not from the South and you hear that accent, it's ingrained in your mind for that to equate to stupidity.
Yeah.
And the minute you start saying something intelligent, I think there's a moment where a person is taken aback, and then I think there's the next moment. I think they're incredibly intrigued, and at that point you have them.
Right.
And so maybe that's even an advantage because I mean, you got an accent like ours, you can hold people in the palm of your damn hand.
Yeah, it does
Yes.
feel like a cheat code sometimes. Like like you said, once they get over that initial hump and they start like looking at you, and then all of a sudden they're like, "This is something I've never in my life seen. I got to stick around for a second." And then it's almost like they think that they at first they thought you were dumber than everybody, but then once they hear you say a smart thing, they think they must actually be way smarter because for this person to have overcome everything they've clearly had to overcome.
Yeah.
So, like, at what point, we ain't got to go too far back in the origin story or whatever, but like, at what point did you know you wanted to be a writer? And, how long have you been going at it? And when did it first like click for you and that type of thing?
I mean, it sounds stupid in some ways, but I mean that as a very, very small child, I grew up surrounded by storytellers, but I grew up surrounded by oral storytellers. And I realized really early that I'm incapable of that. Like I couldn't do what y'all three do. I couldn't stand on a stage and tell a story and keep people entertained. But I realized pretty early on that I could write one. So, my mama was a potter when I was a little kid, and she'd sit at one end of the couch, and at the other end of the couch there was an end table, and up under that end table was an old electric typewriter. And she'll tell people flat out that I was typing on that typewriter and writing stories before I could spell. That I would tell her what I wanted to say, and she'd tell me the keys to press to spell it. And so there was a desire to do that, and a compulsion. I think that's the bigger thing. I think it's a compulsion to create, and I think that was always there.
You ever get tired of it?
Not when it's going well.
Yeah, right.
I mean, when you're hitting on all cylinders, there's nothing that I enjoy more.
I'll ask you. No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's the micro answer, and I don't think I ever get tired of it in the micro. Certainly there's days where it's not going well, and I'm like, ugh. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I get tired of it in the macro, where I'm like, if I didn't have this,
right,
what kind of house would I own by now, or whatever?
What I wanted to ask was in the same vein, which is like me. I also am one of those who, as early as I can remember, this is all I ever wanted to do. And I was when I was like 5 and 6, I had to like one of my dad's. It didn't work, but I had a camera set up in my room, and I pretended I was Leno and all that bullshit. But do you ever? I don't know if you're like me, or I know us. All three of us are kind of this way. Maybe Trey to a lesser extent, because for some reason he's not as riddled with anxiety as me and Drew. But like. Are you decent at giving yourself a fucking break? Like once you've like, do you have a thing where it's like every day you're like, well, God damn it, if I've got time to do this, I've got time to write, so I better fucking write? Or do you have one of those like, all right, if I can get this much in today, then I can go lay on the couch or I can go fish? Or are you just completely riddled at all times with creative anxiety and you want to jump off a fucking cliff?
It's probably kind of a combination of both. But I would say at this point, the greater thing is that I've learned to trust in my process, and I know that my process isn't writing every day.
Right.
Ron Rash was a tremendous mentor for me, and when I was young, I watched him work, and he'd had everything was methodical. Every morning he sat down in front of the computer, he drank a big ass glass of sweet tea. He was left-handed, so that was on the left-hand side of the keyboard. And when everything was set how it was supposed to be, he would sit there and he would work, and he would do that every single day. And as a young writer, I felt inadequate because I didn't work that way. And then one day I ran into an interview with Raymond Carver in the Paris Review, and he described his process, and he said, when I'm not working, he said, it feels as if I've never written a word a day in my life. Yeah. And it was like, that's me. And then he said, when I am, he said, it's what John Asbury called the paddle of days. It's one day of telling into the next, into the next. That's very much me.
Right.
So I know that if I force myself to sit down and try to make it work, that would drive me crazy. I'd blow my goddamn brains out.
Well, yeah, you're going to get shit. So what's the point? Like,
if I sat there every day and I was like trying to write it, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel, but it's taken me a very, very long time to be like, hey, man, if you don't have it today, it's honestly better to not even try, because if you try, you're just going to fucking throw it out tomorrow. Like, that ain't going to work.
Yeah.
Aaron,
to transition a little bit into, I guess, the book and your work in general, let me say I was introduced to you by the Bitter Southerner. You wrote a, not a short story, essay. That's the word I'm looking for, Drew. Digging in the Trash, that resonated with me maybe more than any essay ever has. I encourage anyone out there listening to go find that right now. It's on the Bitter Southerner. If you just type in David Joy Trash, it'll come up. Well, first of all, do you have a preference? Is that two different things in your mind totally? Compare, if you don't mind, essay versus novel writing.
I think the essay is a harder form for me. It just takes an equal amount out of me to get it right, and they're two entirely different beasts. It's like comparing short stories to novels. I can't write a short story to save my life, but the essay I can, but it's typically when I'm pissed off, and so with that essay, it was a guy he'd reviewed a novel of mine and he didn't like the novel, and I could care less if he liked the novel. There's lots of people don't like my novels. Don't hurt my feelings a bit. There's all kinds of books I don't like. But it's actually funny what he did, because Corey tweeted something either today or yesterday that said the same thing. And he said, you need to come down out of the hollers. This is word for word. You need to come down out of the hollers, leave the peeling trailers behind, and try writing about real people for a change. Yeah. And he italicized that word people in the same way that the person that Corey tweeted about put people in quotations, as if to say that you're not even human. And if I could have got my hands around that man's throat, I would have strangled him to death.
Yeah, that really got under my skin.
And it was the dehumanization of the people that I love, I was in a rage. I wrote that essay in a rage. I wrote that essay in a single sitting. I just sat down and wrote it. And typically for me, that if one comes about like that, it tends to work.
Yeah.
And we have that gentleman here on the line. We're going to get him in here. No, but his address is, no, I'm kidding. Well, it's clear why I identified with it. It was written in a fit of pure rage, and defense of people.
Yeah.
I think the angriest I've ever gotten on the internet was not at some, right-wing enemy who's destroying America, but at a law school classmate of mine who essentially said that doing any kind of work, progressive type work where I'm from is a waste of everyone's time because, quote unquote, those people this or those people that. And, well, we're not.
For the record, this motherfucker wasn't even talking to me. I just saw it on Twitter and it made me madder. I can't remember what the context was, but they were just like, that basically they were just like these goddamn dumbass redneck hillbilly, and then in quote people ought not even be on TV. They don't need to glorify blah 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 blah. And I was like, man, none of that made me mad until you put people in quotes. Like I don't mind us being called redneck trash. Hell, like DJs. Most of us are like, fuck yeah, we are. But like the whole people, like they don't even need to put them on TV and blah blah blah. And man, I wanted to come right through that goddamn computer. I'm gonna have to read your essay right after this.
I recommend everybody do it. I also recommend everyone get When These Mountains Burn.
Where can they get that, David?
Anywhere books are sold. Y'all got an indie bookstore in Chickamauga?
Yeah, the library, and mainly it's just
Hell,
a
you
place
can
where
get
we
it
keep
there.
books before they burn them.
Yeah.
I'm big in France, and y'all got an indie bookstore in Chickamauga are two of my favorite things that's ever happened on this podcast.
Well, I've got an indie, but he's got internet. I ain't got internet, but by God, we got indie bookstores.
I bet it's awesome too, ain't it?
You're damn right.
So you prefer an indie bookstore? Is there an online avenue since the pandemic is going on?
Oh yeah, I mean, you can get it. You can get it anywhere.
You
If
have
I
a
was buying
preference?
online, yeah, I'd prefer you buy it from bookshop.org.
There you go.
Which is a was very much a response to Amazon. 10% of all those sales filter back to indie bookstores. I think right now, and the reason I'm so adamant about that is I can't think of many places that are safe havens for weird ass kids like me. More than comic book stores, bookstores, music stores, and right now we need to be supporting those places more so than any time, because
Amen.
the other side of this does not look good for small business. It doesn't look good for venues where y'all performed. It doesn't look good for any of that.
No.
No, and the good news is Jeff Bezos has made $80 billion in the meantime.
Hey, it trickles down, Drew. Remember.
Oh, yeah.
Remember how it goes.
David, I read the book. You sent it to me. I appreciate that. I wanted to tell you guys this on the podcast to get your live reaction. In the inscription, he signed it to me and Andy, and he referenced one of her jokes, not one of mine. And I'm clearly fine with that. I don't know. We've never, let's be honest, I don't think we've ever interviewed a novelist right before or right as their novel came out. I don't know how much into the plot we should or should not get into. Can you give the folks a synopsis or whatever, and then I can tell them my impression, or I don't know how you want to promote this.
Well, I tell you, it's kind of funny that I'm sitting where I am, because there was a man that used to be a fireman here, and his son got bad off on methamphetamine, and at one point he was so far in debt that this man went and bought his son's life back. And he told me a story about riding up the mountain with $10,000 in cash and a shotgun across his lap. And in a lot of ways, that was the genesis for this novel, in that I have a character named Raymond Mathis, whose son's a heroin addict. And in the beginning of the novel, that's exactly what happens. And so I've got this father whose son's an addict, and he's doing everything he can to save him. And then on the other side, I've got an addict, basically living day to day, just searching out the tie. And these two lives are kind of running parallel, and then they eventually intersect. So it's largely a book about the opioid epidemic in Appalachia, more specifically in Western North Carolina, because I think it's hitting here hard right this second, whereas in other places, Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, it was maybe 5 years ago it kind of was the peak. I think things are peaking out right this moment here, and so it's largely about that. It's thematically, it's largely about culture. It's about the death of a culture, juxtaposed against the revitalization of a culture, like what they're experiencing in Cherokee right now. And so really it's kind of playing around with those things.
I thought it was wonderful. You talked about the revitalization of a culture. There was a moment where, not Ray, I'm bad with names. What's the other
Danny
character?
Rattler.
Randy Rattler's having a flashback.
Danny Rattler.
Danny, my bad.
Danny, damn it. Like Danny, like the restaurant.
I got it. Denny's having a flashback of a moment that he had with his sister when he was younger. And I went to Cherokee when they were doing the things you're describing in that flashback. And I can remember being a kid and not being smart enough to know why I felt this way, but like almost kind of feeling sorry. Like it didn't feel right watching somebody in a 15-color headdress dance while someone took their picture.
Yeah.
So that moment was, I don't know, I guess very real for me. But even in the new culture, as the Cherokee are now making money, he didn't have a place.
Yeah, yeah, and I think in a lot of ways, he was ashamed of what it was when he was a child, and then at the moment when he can feel that sense of pride, he's incapable of it because he's too far down the rabbit hole. And I think that's the reality of Cherokee. If you've lived here, if you've been here, you have pre-casino Cherokee, post-casino Cherokee. Pre-casino Cherokee was rubber tomahawks, fake arrowheads, teepees, and headdresses. And there's a part of me who like you looked at that and felt sorry for somebody. At the same time, I don't think that those people were exploiting themselves. I think them people were surviving the only damn way they knew how.
Sure.
What I will say is that post casino, that place has looked like what good socialized programs could look like in this country, which is to say that they've invested in schools. Every kid who's born there can go to college free. It's paid for. They've got better schools than we've got in Jackson County. They've got mental health services. They've got addiction services. They've got top of the line drug treatment facilities there right now. And that's not to say that they're being fully utilized, but that is saying that they're putting the dollars into their communities and into the infrastructure to provide those services for their people. If you go back 25 years, you had a language on the brink of extinction, and now you've got children being raised as native speakers. I'm proud of that place. I'm proud of what Cherokee's doing, and that's not saying that everything's perfect there, because it most certainly is not. That place is absolutely riddled with addiction, just like Jackson County is. But the difference seems to me that they are putting that money into the community, whereas that's not the reality of any place else. Jackson County certainly isn't. Haywood County certainly isn't. None of these places are. If you go to where y'all grew up, if you go to rural Tennessee, they ain't nobody dumping money into Stinking Creek.
No. No, man.
No, they're not. Well, but David, thank you. I mean, we don't want to, take up too much of your time. I would recommend anybody read David's stuff. I thought it was wonderful. The characters were unbelievable. I don't want to give too much away, but when he's riding up the mountain, the person he meets with the bandana, Walt, right?
I don't know what you talk.
Boy,
been so long since I read that.
My man got stung. It's Denny, goddammit.
Yeah. Furious about Denny, but he can't remember the goddamn antagonist name.
Waddy, you talking about Waddy Freeman?
Yeah.
Yeah, Waddy. Oh yeah, yeah. You liked when he said, I ain't calling you that.
Yeah, I laughed out loud.
Fucking name I ever heard of.
That's what he told him.
And it was
looking at the baddest man on Cherokee right in his face and going, "I'm not calling you that. It's the dumbest fucking name I ever heard of."
And David, it was bookshops.com, you said?
Bookshop.org.
Bookshop.org. Okay,
Yep.
ladies and gentlemen, that's where you should go find all of David's stuff and anything if you're going to, because as you said, 10% back to independent bookstores, which is fucking amazing.
Yep.
Hell yeah. Well, dude.
Oh, he's a good follow on Twitter too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, follow him on all this shit.
As Drew said, head to toe legit. The way, the truth, and the life, man. We appreciate everything you do and for coming on here, buddy.
Likewise. I appreciate hell out of everything y'all are doing.
Buddy,
Right
you take it easy. Thanks for being here, and be safe driving back up the goddamn hill to get to your house.
I'll do it.
All right,
Later, man.
David Joy, everybody.
All right, do we need to do anything for the end, the skew or whatever?
I'll fix it. I'll fix it in post. Yeah.
Make that the end.
Thank you all for listening to the Well Read Show. We'd love to stick around longer, but we got to go. Tune in next week if you got nothing to do. Thank you. God bless you. Good night and skew.